And then as they knocked me to the ground, one jumped on my chest and started beating my head into the cement. Well, my response to that was I sat up and I left out the top of my head. Now I think I just went up and out, but at that time, it felt like I just went up. And I went to this place that I had not consciously been to in this lifetime yet. And the place was very like sticky and gooey. It had texture to it. And it was love. It was this like incredible motherly love that was beyond human comprehension. There's nothing on this planet like it.
My guest today is Leigh Grode. Leigh is a spiritual life coach based in Los Angeles, California. On January 3rd of 1991, Leigh experienced a brutal beating where she died and was sent back into her flesh. Leigh has had many burning bush experiences in this lifetime as a result. Leigh specializes in life transitions and spiritual growth with an emphasis on recovery and end-of-life issues for individuals and families. Leigh is a certified channel, voice medium, and spiritual intuitive. She is an internationally recognized energy leadership index master practitioner, and she received her training from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. She has over 38 years in recovery and is an expert on addiction issues. Leigh, thank you so much for being my guest today. I am feeling very honored and blessed to meet you.
Thank you. It's mutual. It's mutual.
Well, thank you. And you have had a profound near-death experience. Do you mind telling myself and my viewers about that?
Absolutely. I was living in the Netherlands. I was going to school. I was a student. And one night I was running late because I had to go see my teacher, my docent, to go over my film, which I was making in the Netherlands. And I went to a phone booth, and phone booths in Amsterdam in that time, this is before cell phones, were big like houses, if you like green versions of a British phone booth, if you will, only bigger. And so I was in the phone booth and I had just dialed my home to tell my girlfriend at the time that I was going to be late. And all of a sudden, these big hands covered my eyes. And my first thought was, oh, peekaboo. And then I realized I was in Holland and there was nobody there that would play peekaboo with me. And so I elbowed and broke the grip of the person who was putting their hands over my head. And then two sets of hands came and they violently pulled me out of the phone booth. And there were three men, and they were drunk, and they kicked my legs out from under me and also kicking my ribs, my hip into my rib cage, and just totally turning all my bones. And then as they knocked me to the ground, one jumped on my chest and started beating my head into the cement. Well, my response to that was I sat up and I left out the top of my head. Now I think I just went up and out, but at that time, it felt like I just went up. And I went to this place that I had not consciously been to in this lifetime yet. And the place was very like sticky and gooey. It had texture to it. And it was love. It was this like incredible motherly love that was beyond human comprehension. There's nothing on this planet like it. And I was like, what is this, And then all of a sudden, this voice started talking to me, and it was a male-ish type voice, and said, go back in your body. And I said, what, are you kidding me? They're beating the crap out of me down there. I don't want to go back in there. And the response, it wasn't another human, it wasn't a human experience. The response was silence. There's this deafening silence. And that silence at that moment was my greatest teacher, because I realized I wasn't in a human experience anymore. And that it's not like you have a conversation with, I'm going to use the term God for lack of a better definition, but let's say you don't have a conversation with God and you have this conversation where, you and I are talking, and it's not like that. There's this essence, and you're not asked to use your voice because you don't have a voice out of flesh. Only you have a personality, and that personality starts to unfold. And what happened in that silence was that I was like, oh my God, this is so much bigger than I can possibly comprehend. And I wasn't one of those who saw a white light or any of that kind of stuff. I was in this essence, this floating essence. And then the voice came back and said to me, go back in your body. And all I did was align myself with a yes, and when I said yes, in my essence, I got sucked back down into my flesh, like the fastest elevator you've ever been on. Boom, back in my body. My body jumped off the ground because I landed. The three guys were still there doing their business, and they jumped back, and they grabbed my attaché case and they ran. And in that attaché case was all my documentary information that I needed to make my film. And I was like out of my mind because, so when I came back in my body, I was like, I didn't sit there dwelling on what I had just experienced. It was like I came back into my body and life picked up right there, right again. And all I can think about was my film. I wasn't in God. I was in human. And I got myself up and I was walking like Quasimodo. I was dragging my right leg. And first I went back to my teacher's house, and he was like, what happened? And I told him what happened. And he said, we have to take you to the hospital. We have to take you to the police. I said, first, I want to go find these guys. I want to find my film. So he said, Leigh, you're crazy. And I said, I don't care. I got to find these guys, Franz. I have to find these guys. And I was so focused. And I found one of the guys, and he was coming out of this house down a few canals down. And in Dutch, you call a canal a grachte, right? So I came out the door and I went, I said, I want my attaché case with everything in it. I don't want to see this. And I said it in English, and I said it in Dutch. And I said, I don't want to find my attaché case in the canal. I will come back here and I will murder you. I will kill you. And I know your history, but that was just the rage in the moment. And I was like, and I know where you live, so consider yourself warned. And then after that, I collapsed. And then they got me up. And at first I went to the police. And mind you, I had also just called Jackie, my girlfriend, on the phone. And the whole attack was recorded on our answer machine, the whole thing. And so that was evidence for the police. And then she found me in the police station and took me to a hospital. And I didn't want them to administer me. But they wanted to watch me overnight to make sure I didn't go into a coma. And I was then starting to feel the physical pain of what had happened. And when I left my body, before I left my body, I stopped feeling the pain of my body. Like I didn't feel the beating. I just lifted up and separated. So I was not aware of the destruction or whatever they were planning to do. So that's what happened on January 3rd, 1991 in Amsterdam. In the peaceful Amsterdam, and my life, even though I didn't have conscious awakening of that experience for a few years, like it would take me 2 years before I would get what happened to me. I would be back in the United States. I would be at home at my friend's house watching, and mind you, I lived in Europe for 5 years. So I didn't know about Oprah Winfrey or any of these, people who talk about stuff. And I turn on the TV and here's this Oprah Winfrey and James Von Prague is on with him. And I don't know if you know who James Von Prague is, but he's a medium, right? And he starts talking about these experiences. And all of a sudden, my body started like shaking, literally shaking. And all the memories came back. And I didn't know what to do with them. I was like, what do I do with this? If I tell somebody what happened, they're going to think I'm crazy and they're going to want to lock me up. And so slowly but surely, and being in recovery, I would share my story. And somebody, a friend of mine said, I know somebody who would like to meet you. I said, okay. And I was like, sure. And she's in recovery too. I was like, oh, great. So we met like 2 days later on the phone and we talked and she said, would you come on my show on Friday? I said, sure. And that was the first time I ever came out I've come out in so many different ways over this lifetime, but never came out as a spiritualist like that, or that I had a near-death experience, which I don't think is a near-death experience. I believe I died and came back. I just, yeah. And I've had other experiences before that and then after that that were also very out of this world, not of this realm kind of experiences. I've always had gifts of seeing things, hearing things, and smelling things. I'm not big on terminology, but the sentience, audio sentient, all that. And I've always had that since I was a little girl. And people wouldn't listen when I told them things. And so it was, and being raised in the environment that I was raised in, I was raised in a very violent environment. And what I understand today, really honestly, I know this sounds a little offbeat, but it wasn't personal. It wasn't, I didn't create that. Even though I may have, as a child, aggravated the heck out of my parents, I'm not responsible for my parents' response and how that came through. And that, whether they accept it or they own it, that's none of my business. I'm 66 years old. I am a grown woman. I don't need my mommy and my daddy to, my dad's passed on, but I was with my dad and I had spiritual experiences with him at the end of his life. And I would be sitting there in his room, just he and I, at the end of his life, and he was in a coma. And I finally said everything I needed to say to him, with him still in flesh. And then he patted the bed like he used to do when I was a little girl, to come sit next to him. So I sat on the bed next to him. I slipped my hand into his hand, and his life force energy field had changed. It was no longer vibrant. It was static, and it was sharp. It was like bolts of electricity. And I realized that was the separation, and it was creating sparks of sorts, And then because I'm able to hear things telepathically, we had a whole conversation, and he did speak to me. And the last thing my dad said to me was, I want you to go home. I want you and Joni to go home and let me know when you get home. So we drove back to Los Angeles from Las Vegas. And then when we got here, this corner of this room, this is a big living room I have. This was my my dead relatives' corner. And I would pray and do ritual here for, in Judaism, we light yahrzeit candles, do all that. This is the area I always did it in. And now this is my desk office corner as well. So what I did is I got here and I leaned here and I said, okay, Daddy, we're home safe. And he transitioned 3 hours later. I had things with many people. I was a caregiver. I got clean in 1985 and AIDS was rampant, and I learned a lot about death and dying then. In my late teens and my early 20s, I was losing my peers and my friends. They were dropping dead on the streets, and nobody was coming forward and helping. And it was a big teaching for me about life and death, and that death is not cruel and death is not violent. People are violent that can cause death, but death itself as an entity is not unkind. Death is kind. Actually, somebody leaving to be in death stops the abuse of whatever's happening in the moment. And so with that, knowing that altered knowing, like there wasn't like something I read in a book and, oh, that makes sense. It was something I felt on the cellular level. And so as life taught me, I was a student of life, truly, as I was a student at university, I got to experience souls. I got to experience the gentleness of souls. The gentleness of transition, the love. It became very clear to me that people needed to be surrounded by love when they left, so they would identify it on the other side. And so I did that a lot. And in the gay community in those days, in the very beginning, there was no medicine. Families were rejecting people. The hospitals were throwing people out because they didn't want them to die in their hospital. They wanted them to die at home. It was cruel. It was absolutely cruel. Society was cruel. So I realized through all these different experiences that my lessons had nothing to do with society. It had nothing to do with the teachings of the holy ones, because the holy ones were falling short of the mark. When I would meet the masters and the holy ones that would roll up their sleeves and get down with it, that's when I started believing in people and masters, people, teachers, call them what you want to call them. And I was graced with the ability to live in a teaching for over 20 years that was about caregiving. And that's what brought me to my teacher. And her name was Majaya Sati Bhagavati, and she taught me a lot. And she became my teacher because I was sitting in her presence, just checking her out, and there were 200 people sitting in front of her. And she got off her couch and walked through the entire body of people to this man who was just wheeled in, who was covered in KS lesions. And she went up to him and she hugged him and she kissed his face and his hands and everything. And I was like, she does what I do. That's what I do. I get into bed with people and we read stupid stories or comics or whatever, tell bad jokes and talk and dish about people and just, whatever part of whatever that individual needs in that moment. And that's why and how she became my teacher. Where I had lost hundreds, she had lost thousands. So all of this brings me to the level of my spiritual practice today and why I do what I do. We are at a new time in creation. Time has changed. It's no longer having to do the heavy trials and tribulations. Today, that we live in the law of flow, that if you align yourself, like having that tug, that's alignment, that you're being pulled forward into an alignment, like a spiritual chiropractic adjustment. And when you get in that position, you get the information, you have the experiences, you share them, you tap them, you meet like-minded souls. Life life on this planet as humans, we are humans, but we're more than humans. And that's what's being talked about now. We're talking about our souls. We came here with life lessons to learn and do, to arm us to be able to do the work that we're here to do today. And today, it's not about mom and dad. Today, it's about being with mom because she's deteriorating and making sure she has everything she needs so she's not uncomfortable. And today is about whether her mouth is wicked or it's nice is irrelevant. It's just being there for her because she brought me into this world and I chose her. And why did I choose her? Because I was bad? No, I chose her to polish my humanity, to be able to stand in the face of meanness and brutality and maintain my groundedness. This has taken me years, decades of learning. I just hit another level of understanding. And, people say I live in California. I'm from New York originally, but that, the hairy fairy, the little inner child thing, but it's true. Every year that we've lived, we've had these experiences, and not all of them have been digested. So if you want to incorporate and integrate yourself into your soul, you need to release the darkness and it doesn't have to be ripped out. You have to be open to hearing what it is and accepting it and integrating it back into the bigger picture. And so as a coach, that's what I help people do. But on a larger scale, I really understand today how our hearts, there's a God spark, the soul of our soul essence is in our hearts. That's what makes the little thing pump there, that spark of life. And then our hearts are housed in this flesh, this carbon envelope that we really need to maintain to keep our soul in our body so our bodies can stay here on the planet. But then outside of our soul, our flesh lives inside our greater soul. So this whole area out here is our soul. And it's not just my soul. When I'm in my home with my partner, it's her soul, my soul, our soul. When I'm even here, even through the computer, we're sharing soul space because we're connected. We have an idea. We have a telepathic ability to communicate and have ideas and visions that are similar or not similar, but that we learn from. And in this space, we merge together. Every bit of air that every single being breathes is shared. Every exhalation is shared. It's all shared. So what is this? This is the sticky, gooey stuff that I felt when I was on the other side. This is how we create it. We through our breath. Because if you think about what is breath literally, not just air going through our nostrils, it goes through the sticky canal into our bodies, and it goes into our bodies, and then we exhale it. We exhale the sticky gooiness. So it may be thinner, and at other times it could be denser, depending where you are. If you're in a circle of enlightened beings, it's thicker because you have that density, that connection. It's multiplied, and then we send it out there.
I had a guest on recently who is like a master of words. He loves words and loves to get to the root of the word and what it truly means. And it's interesting that you said the sticky, gooey stuff that you felt on the other side was the breath, because he said the root word for spirit is actually like inhalation and exhalation, inhaling and expiring. And that goes right along with that. That's amazing.
It is, isn't it?
I've never heard it explained quite like that before. And that makes sense now. Because you think about spirit as being the breath. I can think about that, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me until just the way you explained it. Now it makes more sense.
Well, good. I'm glad, because it's kind of interesting, because in this conversation, I'm getting a lot of downloads, a lot of images. So I'm just sharing what I'm being told also, and because I don't sit around thinking about how sticky it is, but I was asked to look at how you breathe. And I was like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same. Like if we could get inside and feel that, it's the same texture.
Isn't that something? Well, just amazing. I want to go back to you said in your childhood you had some spiritual gifts, and do you think that they were intensified after your near-death experience? They got stronger?
Um, I think they were always there, but I think life distracted me from them. And so literally leaving the flesh, like wiped it out, whatever life is, when you, that transition out of flesh into spirit, only spirit. So it wiped it out. So any, anything we carry with us that's a human experience was eliminated. And I think as a child, we're closer to it because we don't have those distractions yet.
I like that. I think that also, I think pain is something that contributes to our, um, I guess, getting away from spirit, getting away from those gifts that more children have than adults. When you experience pain throughout life, you go deeper into yourself and become more centered in yourself, more focused on you, and less focused on the oneness. So,
Well, can I flip that a little?
yes.
Okay. I think pain and illness, okay, both are moments that you're being shook. We're being shook. We're being told, come here, open your eyes, listen. This is to, and then, but the thing is that part of the human experience is that we're not given choice by the people who raise us. If we were taught how to choose at a young age, we would have less of that.
I agree with that as well. I think that I have had my experiences. Pain woke me up. It shook
Right,
me awake.
right.
Yes. And I think that happens especially for near-death experiencers as well.
Yeah,
So, yes, definitely. Pain is a blessing in disguise at times.
it is. It is. It's not, as long as you don't buy into it, it's kind of like really hard. Well, I'm in pain, I'm suffering. I said, suffering you're doing to yourself. Pain is a reaction to an experience that you're having. Because if you use what's hurting you as a weapon, if you weaponize that, that pain turns into suffering and you are totally distracted and disconnected then from any source that could help you. And it takes a spiritual awakening of some sort to break that.
And I think it's important for my viewers to know too that there's not a time frame that you have to process your pain in. I've had guests on that they died when they were 5, and 37 years later they're still processing it. And then people like you who it took 2 years, which does seem like a long time, but in that perspective it's not quite as long. So it's there's not a template, like this is how long it's going to take for you to figure out your lessons.
Right,
It's a lifelong learning process.
right. But the thing, I think that we have to, if we can, get to the place where I believe that we choose our lessons for the lifetime, like before we're born. And I think I'm going to say this too, that the death process and the birth process are very similar in one way. The idea of that you have all the information you need for a lifetime when you come into this world, but you're in the belly of the mother and you're growing and you're becoming a human being inside there, right? But you start off as a spark, and that spark, it doesn't matter size, has everything that we all need, right? That's what lands in our hearts. That spark lands there and everything grows from there, right? So what happens is that when you're born, you come through the birth canal, you're wiped out. All your memories are wiped out. So when you, same thing with like this experience of leaving, my human experiences in those moments were wiped out. And then I came back in and I was right where I left off. But in death, our loved ones have the ability, because they're not in flesh, to have that access to all of it.
I was going to ask you if that was possible for like once we are permanently there, or we're not coming back. It's not a near death experience. We're not coming back. We've died. Our body's in the ground. How does our family access that? Is that the Akashic records?
Akashic records are different than accessing our family, our beloveds, right? So an Akashic record is an accounting of soul lessons for your entire existence as a soul, not just this lifetime. So there's these, people say they're books, there's this, I do this meditation of going to the Akashic records to see in the building, walk in, find your book, pull it down, open the book, what do you see? And that's a meditation to learn about soul, but that's about the individual soul. So when when a beloved transitions out of here and they're no longer in the flesh, well, they have a disorientation period, and they have to get oriented with being on the other side or being without body. But we have attachments, the strings, the golden invisible strings that are attached when you get married, when you have a baby, when you love somebody, when you say the words, I love you, I care about you, when you create that attachment, those attachments remain, right? They just get stretched. And sometimes, I don't know if this happens for you, but sometimes it just all of a sudden it really hurts when you start thinking of him or your father. Like for me, it's my dad or my grandmother's. Like I smell them, and sometimes I feel this like, oh, this pain. And then I realize, oh my God, their vibration is close to me and it's shaking me on the inside. So they have access to a lot of things, but they also get involved in other things on the other side. And they may transition. I don't know where they are in their reincarnation and what they're coming back, or if they're coming back. Most people come back. And there's a lot less bodies than there are souls that want the bodies. So to have a body is really very special. And that's why we need to take care of our bodies too. But yeah, I think that it's fair. Like I do mediumship work, and that's when a lot of times I will speak to discarnates, people who are no longer informed, and see what they need, why they're stuck, and try and help release them so they can lift up higher and become lighter. There are souls that are very heavy, that are carrying all the burdens of this lifetime and other lifetimes. And sometimes what happens is a person comes back into a new life, still holding the old life. And they have to recreate the situation to heal it. And I don't know if you know about like family constellation work.
I don't think so.
It would be a very interesting thing to find out about. I don't know where you are in the country, but family constellation work is a series of bringing forth the truths of an individual's life and having it acted out for us by others, like others who are trained to be in this. They take the part, and you don't know what they're going to say, what's going to come, but they all get information, and you get to uncover and release decades of pain and suffering in 30 minutes. It's incredible. So that's a similar kind of work, access, another open door, another tool, to do all this.
You talked about some souls are carrying a lot of heavy burdens, and your work involves helping them release those burdens so they can become lighter and move up through the realms. Is that something we can begin on Earth in this life? And how would we do that?
To connect with discarnates and help them lighten the load
No, release our burdens so when we pass on to the other side, we're not as heavy.
by doing the work. And what does that mean? Some people do it like with family constellations. Some people do it in therapy. Some people do it in 12 steps, some all different ways. But you have to have the ability to tell the truth and be honest. And I'll tell you something, I wouldn't normally share something like this, but so yesterday I had a session with somebody for myself. And because I had this thing come up in my physical health, and I had a blockage in my intestines, to tell you the truth. And I was like, what is causing this blockage? And, the doctors will talk about the medical stuff, but I know that this is metaphysical. This is a soul lesson. So I went in and I decided I was going to really face it. And so what happened was I was asked, how old is this? And it was all these different ages. So I started talking to my 16-year-old. And for 45 minutes, I let her talk and I just listened. And my 16-year-old was the one who experienced a lot of physical abuse, a lot of violence, a lot of beating up, a lot of strangulation, a lot of being thrown down the stairs, head first, hit into the wall. And I just listened to it, and I just listened to it. And I was like, oh my God. Oh, thank you. Thank you for surviving that. Thank you for being here now and telling me all this. And in the process of doing that, I let go of something that I didn't even know I was holding on to. That's 50 years ago. However, there's no timeline. There just has to be a willingness to be honest and say the truth out loud. And I don't know what the results of that experience is yet, because it happened yesterday. But when I feel it, there's a level of humility that washes over me, a calmness that I wasn't able to touch on that level. I've been angry about it. She's been angry about it. All my kids have been angry. It was not a fun experience growing up in my family, and for me. And so it's like, okay, I hear you. Okay. And I made the commitment to stay with her and keep her forward and present with me, and just let her talk whatever she wants. And next week I'll go to the next one, and so forth. And wherever it is. And the next one and the next one. Because if we ask ourselves in every experience, and this is the answer, if you can stop and ask yourself, how old do I feel? And then go back to that part. But you have to stay grounded as the adult you are today, so that you could be the parent to that child who didn't receive parenting, who never got the direction, and listen, and then build and create a relationship and have peace. And so what that creates is an integration on a whole new level. And that's how we do it. We don't carry our burdens. It was a teacher, but it took many years to understand that wasn't being beat. You feel like something's wrong with you because you're being punished in this extreme way. And to be able to learn, and sometimes, and this is where we need help. We can't do this by ourselves. To learn that you didn't do anything wrong, that it was a lie. It was a lie. I mean, your 16-year-old daughter is graced with you as a mother. You have a sensitivity and an awareness that most parents don't have. I am lucky too to have a daughter who's married and gave us two beautiful grandchildren, 7 and 4. And with them, we do such healing because we get to be on their level and see how bright these beings who are not being interrupted. We were interrupted. They're not interrupted, and to make sure they're in a safe space. That's so glorious. That's so glorious. And one time my son-in-law went to Pachka, the kid, for doing something wrong. And I had such flashbacks and body memories. I was like, no. And he wasn't doing what my parents were doing. But I still have a visceral reaction to it.
Yeah, it's like PTSD, you know? You get triggered when something similar happens and it brings the memories back, and you don't want to see anyone else have to go through what you had to go through.
It's a very healing process to speak the truth. And the thing that with, doing a podcast and then people contact people when they hear that you have the ability to talk to spirit, they want you to talk to the spirit for them, right? And I want to say, it's not that I don't want to talk to spirit for you, but you can't talk to spirit and not do your work. It's not a shortcut. There are no shortcuts. That's what life is.
How can people become more intuitive so that they can talk to spirit on their own?
Everybody has the ability to do this. Everybody. You have to be clear and clean inside to hear. And so either you could study, some people do it through meditation. I think that there are a lot of people teaching how the beginning courses of how to start to listen and observe. Become aware of what you are already doing. So how do you do that? You say, I am willing to see the gifts I have. And if that's a true statement, you will begin to see the truths you have, the gifts that you have. Remember that time that somebody lost their keys and you saw it in your mind's eye and say, oh, they're over there. And they're there. That's a gift. They think, not all people who hear voices are crazy. They may be crazy, but that's what society wants to tell you. But maybe they're really intuitive and they have very big receivers and can hear things that most people can't hear.
Anyone can reach out to their loved ones who have died. Is it more difficult to reach out or receive communication from
Okay, I'll give you.
someone, yeah, someone that you know, because there is that connection that's so intense?
Yes, I'm going to say this. I'm going to give you a what I call a soul to soul communication, a meditation. Okay. So if you're a meditator and you know how to clear the chakras or whatever you do to get grounded, okay? So, but the most important thing is whether you open all your chakras, which I do recommend. You start with you after you do that initial opening, you go into your heart and you breathe into your heart and out the top of your head. You want to come out the crown. And then you want to breathe again. And you do this 3 times, right? And there's this place above the head, the 9th chakra. It's called the Chittakash in Hinduism. And it's the heart above the head. It's also the opening to soul communication. So some people use their third eye, some people use their crown, whatever works for you. But if you breathe into your heart, in and out, and then you get into this, like, just feel the muscles in your shoulders relax. No big dump, no craziness, no standing on your head, holding a mudra position. Just relax. You all of a sudden you're like, get there. Okay. Relax. Let the shoulders drop. When your shoulders are dropping, you are opening. Okay. So you're open. You say, I'm open. Who do I want to think? Who do I want to bring forward? That's what the act is. So I have an invocation that I do. This is my personal one. And I acknowledge, and I invite God, goddess, all there is, all the aspects that could be of divinity forward to share their love and their wisdom, but to bring the love, the divine love. And then from there, I ask the unseen. I invite the unseen forward. I have guides who I speak to. And I have one in particular, Sebastian, who comes through and I do vocal channeling. And he's Irish, so our voices are different. Anyway, so from that place, you think of the person. You say their name 3 times out loud. Please come forward. If you're available, please come forward. If you're available, please come forward. And then And you can do this with the departed, and you can do this with another human who's still alive. You can communicate soul to soul. When I did my healing work with my mother, who's still in flesh, I did this every night for 3 months to get out what I needed to get out so that I could be there unburdened. And every time I would see her after I did this, she would answer me. So I just want you to know it works. So because they're not in flesh doesn't mean they're not answering. So if you're in that altered state, you just sit and breathe into your heart and open your ears, and you will hear what you need to hear. And that's soul to soul communication.
Well, that's not that difficult. That sounds like a pretty easy
Right,
meditation.
right. Exactly. It's not surgery. It's not brain surgery, It's available to us all, really.
And that's what we need to hear, myself and maybe some of my viewers as well, that we do have the ability, we have more abilities than we even know of, because our society does not nurture anything in a spiritual way. Like you said, it's called crazy or whatever. It's just not recognized. It's a little taboo.
Right. It's quite taboo. You can't tell a psychiatrist that you hear things and you see things unless they're a spiritual being.
Yeah, 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 that's true. And so for you to break it down so simply,
Yeah,
that could be the meditation that can change someone's life.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's so simple. It's take complicated. Those days are over. We're in a new time. We're in the age of Aquarius. It's the feminine energy. It's no longer the Mars energy.
Do you feel the planet, you were just talking about it, but do you feel like the entire planet is going through a transition and like a increase in vibration?
What happened with COVID? Did this whole planet not get shut down? I mean, they say it's a mistake now, but I didn't think a spiritual experience is a mistake. Thank you very much. When the streets are empty in every city around the world, that's incredible.
Do you have any last words of wisdom for my viewers?
Yeah. Be happy. Reach for joy. Don't suffering, it's not necessary. If you learn the lessons of the causation and ask yourself, why am I in this position? What is the lesson here? That will unwind. You'll get more information. You could only get information, though, in speaking the truth. And if you come from your heart, you're good as gold because the heart is where you want to be, not the brain. You can't think your way out of this situation. You have to work your way out of this situation. You have to be. This is a time and an essence of being and letting our essence expand and unfold. Do you want peace? Do you want joy? You think that's boring? Not really. It's quite exciting, but you have to figure that part out for yourself. If there's something that I can personally do to help you, and I will not tell you what Spirit says for you, but if you want to do the work to unfold this, I'm available.
And how would my viewers reach you if they wanted to use your services?
Sure, they can contact me through my website. That's my name, Leigh Grode, at .com, www.leighgrode.com.
And I'll link that below so everyone who wants to, they can just click on it and instantly find you.
Yeah, yeah, come on. It's a great time to be on the planet. I know there's a lot of craziness going on, but stand back and watch. Don't jump into the fold. If you don't like to swim in a river, then don't jump in.
Yeah, it's intense, that's for sure. It's an intense time to be alive. And like you said, exciting. There's always something new happening, and
Exactly. It's
we're here for a reason.
exactly. And we're here to spread the love. We have to balance the insanity with love. That's why we're here. Let's be serious. We are the divine love when we can breathe into our hearts and breathe out. We have to do this. It is required. It's not a joke. It's not a slogan. It's on a t-shirt or on a bumper sticker. We have to be the love. The time is not tomorrow. The time is now.
Well, let's do that. I'm ready.
Okay.
Leigh, you have been amazing. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me and for sharing your wisdom with me and my viewers. And I wish you the very best in everything.
Thank you. Same. I wish that to you too. But if there's anything I can ever do, please just let me know. You have my information, you have my number.
I do. Thank you, Leigh. Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. So let's all spread the word, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.